Lally?
Here.
Amy White?
Here.
Ralph Wentz? Here. Here. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the January 11th meeting. Can I have a motion? So moved. To second.
Second.
Motion carries. Next up is on to the treasury report. Mr. Phillips. Okay, our regular general fund at the end of January had a cash balance of $1,708,572.82. Encumbered against that, $1,159,043.22, leaving an unencumbered balance of $549,529.60. We're in the process. February 23rd, we'll start getting advances on calendar year first half, our fiscal year second half tax collections. So we're kind of just between now and the end of this month. We'll be in the most of what I call the lull of our financial cash flow. Other funds, we have nothing encumbered against our bond fund. If that's not due until June 1st, currently has $786,418.46. Jumping down to all funds for student activities, grants, athletics, total cash fund balance of $2,694,436.20. Encumbered against that, $1,349,733.25, leaving an unencumbered balance of $1,344,702.95. Of that cash fund balance of $2,694,436.20, it's dispersed as follows. With the STAR account, we have $230,165.06. The Farmer's Sweep, $1,674,267.90. Our total petty cash fund, $780. And when you crunch all that math, it comes out to $789,223.24. And that proofs out as follows. Our regular farmer's account, $850,000 even. We have one deposit in transit from the cafeteria for $18.25. Our general fund outstanding checks, $60,795.01. And that math does proof out at $789,223.24. Also sent to you was the appropriation summary, the revenue summary, and the check pay report. And if there are any questions on those, I can try to entertain those now, and if not, I'm done with that part.
Any questions?
All right. Can I have a motion to accept it?
So moved.
Ralph moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Terry seconds. All right. Next on the agenda is new business with district reports.
Good evening, everyone. I'll call on Mr. Matus for elementary good news.
Good evening, everyone. Start with a little bit of art news from the elementary this month. First, we've been very fortunate in our first grade classes. A parent, former teacher, Mrs. Tammy Engel, has been coming into all of our first grade rooms once a month and doing some different art projects with all of our classes. So each month she's featured a different artist, and I was fortunate enough to get some pictures here today, and I'll go ahead and pass those around to the board. You can see some of the work that the first graders have been doing that have been out in our hallways. On January 25th, the PTO brought in the new Youngstown Percussion Quartet to perform for all of our elementary students and staff. Each grade level had their own performance in the auditorium for about 45 minutes. They listened to and they learned about various types of percussion instruments. So a big thank you to Mrs. Bailey, who's worked over the past several years to find new and interesting ways to bring artists into the elementary, and also a big thank you to the PTO for sponsoring the day. The Title I staff right now is working on putting together our Right to Read Week, which will be February 26th through March 2nd. Many guest readers will visit the classrooms and read to the students, and this year the theme is Dr. Seuss. Each day the students will receive a treat to go along with the theme. Also throughout February there is a Read at Home contest, so that's currently going on. The students try to read for as many minutes as possible, either on their own or with their parents. To wrap up the week, there'll be a Dr. Seuss assembly in the auditorium. So a big thanks to our Title I staff, Mrs. Pulianis, Mrs. Cardinal, Mrs. Wingler, Mrs. Hay, for organizing our Right to Week event. And as Mrs. Toy said today, wherever Mrs. Toy is,
I'm right here.
there she is, for keeping that going. Finally, we're trying something new at the elementary, and I think Mrs. Scott here tonight? No? Okay. Trying something new at the elementary with the help of Mrs. Scott, with her husband Troy, Mrs. Maynard, and Mrs. Pierce from the cafeteria. This is called the All Pro Dads Program. This is an opportunity for our dads to come in, spend some time with their children, and try to strengthen their relationships. So we're starting with our 3rd and 4th grade students and trying to see what type of response we have because this will take place during breakfast on the last Friday of each month. So a little bit of concern if we did K-4 to start, so starting with 3rd and 4th. This program was founded in 1997 with the help of Tony Dungy, who's the former coach of the Indianapolis Colts. The idea is to invite our dads or another significant male role model to come in the morning and have breakfast with their child once a month. There'll be a leader, which this first time will be Troy Scott, and the leader of the event will have topics for the child and the dad to talk about while they have breakfast. There'll be some fun activities and various interactive discussions for the dads and the kids. So again, big thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Scott, Mrs. Maynard, and Mrs. Pierce to help organize the event. So far, we've had a very, very positive feedback and getting the reservations for that. So we're looking forward to it.
Thank you. Mr. Zolik, middle school.
Good evening, everyone. Between the time we last reported and now, we had our middle school spelling bee. That spelling bee took place on January 9th. I'd like to congratulate the top 3 place winners. 3rd place was Jessa Flowers. She's in 5th grade. 2nd place was Ethan Viano. He's in 5th grade also. And then our 1st place winner was Sydney Roadham. Well, she's in 8th grade, and she'll represent South Range at the Vindicator Spelling Bee in March. Groups of South Range Middle School students will have the opportunity to participate in 2 STEM activities over the course of the next 2 months. First, South Range will be the first and only Mahoning County school to participate in the Northeast Ohio Project for Schools. This project wants to ignite the inner genius of middle school students through a 9-week challenge that touches on multiple academic standards, including math, science, art, and financial literacy, while inspiring creative thinking, team building, and problem solving. We received our kits, I think the last week of January, and the students are all working hard on those projects. And then through March, in conjunction with the Youngstown Business Incubator, Project Inspire, and NASA, South Range students will be chosen to participate in the Let It Glide Challenge. 3 teachers will attend professional development on March 1st. Students will receive their materials for this project at the beginning of the first week of March. We are, as you know, the past few years we've done a 5th grade reading challenge. 5th grade students reached their 2nd goal of 1,500 books. As a reward, Mr. Steve Coca from Coca's Pizza donated pizza for all to enjoy, and the students were provided with a video game afternoon. The next goal was 3,000 books, and I think the reward involved somebody sleeping on a certain structure. You didn't know I volunteered. You're good at that. And final thing for the middle school, on Friday, February 9th, 7th, 8th grade students, along with Mr. Rappich and Mrs. Pettit, traveled to Leonard Kurt School to have lunch with their middle school students. They were celebrating No One Eats Alone Day, a program to promote inclusion and eliminate social isolation. Students who participated were Kennedy Allen, Logan Cormel, Xander Hall, Jake Matus, Quentin Pugh, Katie Sebastian, and Caden Sykes. These 8th graders represented South Range well. At the end of the visit, our students expressed how fast time went and how they would love to do that more often. The experience had a positive impact on both groups of students. And then just a couple upcoming things. We're going to have a winter dance for 7th and 8th graders on the 23rd of February. And then we're also trying something new this year. We're going to do a father-daughter dance for 5th grade students. And that's going to take place on February 24th. So that's it from the middle school.
Thank you, Mr. Zolik. Mr. Rowan, high school, good news.
Evening, everyone. From the high school, this past weekend we had our winter homecoming. We crowned Brendan Miller and Coke Thomas as our king and queen for the winter homecoming. Had the dance on Friday night. Everybody kind of holding their breath with the weather when it kind of came in the middle of the dance, but fortunately everyone got home safe. Recently, as this past school year, we started a mentor program in the high school where we have high school kids that are going and mentoring elementary age students or middle school age students depending on need. It's a group of adults, Mrs. Maynard, Erica Berkey, Kristen Scott, myself, Mr. Matus. We kind of sit down and we meet, we figure out the needs of kids, and then we selectively go through kids that have signed up in the high school to be kind of like a role model if an elementary student is having problems with more so, it could be anything, academic, or it could be social. It could be lunchtime, could be recess, could be any of those days or any of those events. Recently, we just placed 11 new students last week. The program seems to be going very well. It really is probably the brainchild of Mrs. Maynard, because she was in our high school at one time. She's now in the elementary. She sees the needs of the kids over there, and she knows what our kids in the high school side can do. So it's exceeded our goals for the first year, as far as I see it as a high school principal, with the number of kids that we have going over there, and then me getting to talk to the high school kids and seeing what my high school kids are getting out of that program. It was really set up for us to help those younger kids, but in a lot of cases, I think the younger kids are also drastically making an impact on the high school kids as well. From Mrs. Pluchinski, she's happy to announce that the Media Center has once again benefited from a student senior project. Amariah Fitch created a beautiful installation in the library with inspiring quotes for her Raider Ripple movement. And I have some photos that I'll share with the board from Mrs. Pluchinski. Amariah, it's almost like the random act of kindness that Amariah is trying to start. And she's trying to get it to ripple from one kid to the next kid to the next kid. I know she's hitting some snags, but the way she's handling it it's admirable, because she's not giving up, she's not slowing down, and she's going to make a difference. Some way, somehow, that girl is going to make a difference. May not be in our building, and I keep telling her that. It might not happen just so fast, but she's so persistent that eventually it's going to happen. I promise her all the time. Mrs. Pluchinski is thanking Amariah for spreading kindness and creating an inspiring space for the students to share. She really did make the library area really nice. She took a lot of time for that. Congratulations to the following music students that participated in the District 5 solo and ensemble competition at Warren G. Harding on February 3rd. The following students received outstanding ratings of a 2: Philip Dispenza, Laura Byler, Courtney Rapp, Jeanette Griffin, and Brianna Griffin. And the following students received superior ratings, which is a rating of 1. Tom Landry, Audrey Shannon, Harley Novak, Jesse Thomas, Richard Ferenchek, Courtney Rapp, and Hannah Ferenchek. And then the last thing from the high school is, everybody here knows how great our kids are and how they go above and beyond and do things that when they do it, it just kind of surprises you. Early in the year, we had 2 senior girls, Olivia Primavera and Gianna Guerreri. With all the hurricane disasters and the wildfires, these 2 young gals came to me and said that they wanted to do a coin drive. And every year we kind of get this push for coin drives, this, that, or the other. These 2 wanted to do a coin drive and donate all the money to American Red Cross. So they set it up in the middle school, the elementary school, and the high school, and they basically, for like a week and a half, collected coins. And then they had a contest, a pizza party for the winning class, and I think it was the kindergarten that won. But last week I received a nice letter from the American Red Cross, because over the break, the girls and I went over to in Liberty to the American Red Cross, and we presented the check to the gal. Her name was Karen Conklin, and when she heard about what the girls did and when she opened the check, I didn't tell her how much the check was worth. It was actually worth $1,195. When she opened the check, she was just like floored, and she took it upon herself basically to write the nicest letter for the 2 girls. This is not a senior project. This is something that they went and did above and beyond. And I just wanted to make sure that I got to recognize both those girls. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Rowe. The next, Mrs. Pierce, our food service representative with the nutrition group, is not here tonight. She's ill, and she did ask me to share one thought, reminding everyone Then on February 26th, it's Fairy Tale Day, obviously in the elementary, but also in the cafeteria. Fairy Tale Day, inviting the board to come during elementary lunch if they wanted to see the kids in their costumes, and to have a big bad wolf burger from Mrs. Pierce at Food Service. Can't pass that up. Big bad wolf burger. Mr. Farron, athletics.
Yes, good evening. Just some quick winter sports updates. Our swimming team just completed their season at the district meet. Unfortunately, this year we did not have anybody going on to the regional meet, but they did end up as a team setting 6 new school records. The wrestling team just got done with the EOWL tournament. We had a couple athletes place in that, and now they're getting ready for the state individual tournament. As some of you might have read in the paper about the state duels tournament, we do not do the state duels tournament, we do the individual tournament. So that's what we will be starting within the next 2 weeks. The girls basketball team, they are just currently had their senior night. They also received the #1 seed in the Struthers district. And on Saturday, February 24th at 1 o'clock, they will play the winner of Canton Central Catholic and East Palestine here at South Range. The boys basketball team will have their senior night tomorrow night between the JV and varsity games. The boys basketball team also received the #1 seed in the Salem district, and they will play the winner of East Palestine and Columbiana on Friday, March 2nd at 7 p.m. And this will take place here at South Range also. Middle school sports, our wrestling team, they took first place in the EOWL tournament in their division, and they ended up 2nd out of 29 teams in the entire Eastern Ohio Wrestling League, which when you're talking about 2nd out of the 29 teams, you're talking about everybody that's around this area, the Boardmans, the Fitches, everybody. So congratulations to our wrestling team at the middle school. 7th and 8th grade girls basketball teams, they are both competing tomorrow night at 4:30 and 5:30 in the finals of the Grand Valley tournament, both 7th and 8th grade girls teams. The 8th grade boys will play in the quarterfinals of the Bristol tournament on Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. 7th grade boys lost their first round tournament game, but because all the 7th grade tournaments basically wouldn't take us, they played in the 8th grade tournament at Bristol and lost to the 3rd seed, but they played very good against the older competition. And I know it's hard to believe, but a week from today, spring sports, baseball and softball will be starting, and track will be starting on March 5th.
Great news. Thanks, Mr. Farron. Mrs. Lewis, Curriculum Instruction, Special Education.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. I just have one kind of update, basically from Curriculum Department. Just recently, Ohio has been granted $35 million from the U.S. Department of Education to improve literacy in our K-12 schools and students throughout the state of Ohio. So that grant went out very, very quickly to districts, and we are going to partner with Mahoning County as a consortium. I believe there are 16 schools in it, where we had to write a local literacy plan. We have a team of teachers and administrators who compiled that very quick, short timeline, submitted that to the Educational Service Center. We're now in the revision phase, which is due on Friday. The actual grant is due March 2nd, so it's very aggressive timeline. And then I believe the ESC is hoping for $1.2 million to improve some of these literacy skills in our low incidence populations throughout the state. So we're very hopeful that our hard work is going to pay off and that we will be granted some of that literacy money. So that's kind of what we're working on outside what we normally do from 8 to 3. So.
It'd be great to see those dollars come our way. Thank you. And Mr. Dunn, Transportation.
Good evening, everyone. Transportation-wise, everything's going well through our winter months. We did apply for a grant back in October for the EPA to receive 2 new buses. Unfortunately, we did not receive that grant. However, we'll try again October 2018 to get another bus We also will try to find other creative ways to get funding to get a new used bus or a new bus. We did recently purchase a used bus from Poland to replace one of our older buses as well. Other than that, that's it for transportation.
Thank you very much. Without Mr. Pagnotta at Technology or Facilities, Mr. Pagnotta is at the Technology Conference in Columbus this evening, and tomorrow we'll be returning back Wednesday. So no report from him, and naming legislative and student achievement liaisons a little bit later.
All right.
Soon.
Yeah. First thing on our agenda is actually talking about our legislative liaison and student achievement liaison. Do you want to more?
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of information. As you recall, over the years, we've had 2 board members that have served, and these are as appointed, and actually they volunteer, and for good graces, Mr. Christian and Mrs. Lowley have agreed to serve as Mr. Christian as the OSBA legislative or student achievement liaison, and Mrs. Lowley the legislative liaison. So what does that mean to the audience? The Ohio School Boards Association, I'll give you the 4 objectives for the legislative liaison. Both would come back in the month of March and just provide a brief bullet point presentation of what's new in their respective categories. Legislative liaisons to share at least monthly information from OSBA about state and federal education-related legislation with their fellow board members, encouraging school board colleagues to contact legislators on important legislative issues, which is constantly ongoing, to establish and maintain relationships with their legislators, and to join Kids PAC, OSBA's Political Action Committee, and to encourage other board members to join as well. This would be Mrs. Lowley's objectives as a legislative liaison. The student achievement liaison, Mr. Christian's objectives would be to share at least, again, monthly information about ways to improve student achievement with fellow board members, encourage their school board colleagues to focus on improving student achievement, to establish and maintain relationships with their academic booster groups, to send information on successful district programs to the Student Achievement Leadership Team, and to nominate the programs for the Student Achievement Fair, and to participate in SALT activities and encourage other members to do so as well. There are several events during the Capitol Conference. And that would be Mr. Christian's objectives, duties for the remaining calendar year.
All right. Do we have any questions about that from any board members?
Actually, do you have a question? In regards to, since we're appointing ourselves legally, will we have to abstain?
That's a great question.
Will we legally have to abstain since we're voting for ourselves into these positions?
No, never have in the past, and they haven't taken us away yet, so I'll say no.
Fair enough.
All right. Good question. Any other questions? All right. Next up for discussion is the 2018-2019 academic calendar.
As you're well aware, we've had 4 versions. We're talking about the 18-19 academic calendar, this calendar for next school year. The South Range Education Association has provided a number of different versions. We had the start that is identical to this school year for 18-19, identical. It matches almost day to day what we currently are going through. We had a later start. We had a later start with a short spring break. We had an early start with a short spring break, a lot of different scenarios. I'm recommending tonight pretty much the identical, the twin of what we've just gone through at least half of our school year, which is an earlier start. August 20th would be the first day of school. We would take Fair and Labor Day break off the 27th through the 31st. Classes would resume on September 4th. We would have an earlier conference night, which I believe is very productive for our staff and our students, on October 11th. End of the first 9 weeks would be October 26th. We would have conferences on the 11th as well. October 11th, Thanksgiving break, the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of November. And then December would be Christmas break, December 21st through the 31st. We would have a professional development day on Wednesday, January 2nd for staff. Winter or spring conferences would be February 14th, and the 15th and 18th off, just like we have this long weekend. The last day of school for students would be May 31st, and graduation would be May 25th. Again, pretty identical. We had calamity days, extra days we needed to make up. They would be made up at the end of the year.
Any questions or comments from the board? All right, next up is talk about open enrollment for the 2018-2019 school year.
As you know, for the last 3 years, we've had open enrollment. This is a resolution for the 18-19 open enrollment, whereas the Ohio Revised Code, Section 3313.98, allows the Board of Education to permit inter-district enrollment when district capacity limits by grade level school buildings and education programs are not negatively impacted. And whereas the South Range Local School District Board of Education has determined that inter-district open enrollment during the 18-19 school year will not have a negative impact on district capacity limits by grade level, school buildings, and education programs. The board has determined to permit students in statewide school districts to apply for open enrollment in the South Range local schools. This would run, we'd start with applications tomorrow, February 13th, and I believe we would close all open enrollment. I don't have it in front of me, I believe it's May 31st. May 31st. So open up, actually we would accept them on Tuesday, February 19th or 20th, whatever this next Tuesday is, and then we'd run that through May 31st. Questions on open enrollment from my end?
I have a question. How do we pick the children that are chosen for open enrollment?
Everyone that is here now would be able to return unless there were discipline issues or attendance issues. Those that are new to the district, it's first come, first serve. They go through an enrollment or registration, and then we look through those applicants to make sure, once again, there has not been any discipline, attendance, or any issues that would prohibit us from accepting them. So they are screened, but we can't discriminate based on where they're coming from or townships, villages, or anything like that.
So we do have criteria in there where we don't have to take them if they're a problem child?
If there's been past discipline problems and can be documented, correct.
Is there anything we can do if they're continually causing problems throughout the year to kind of basically send them back to their home school that year if it's a
We would treat
recurring
those
big
students
enough?
just like any other student. We go through our discipline student conduct code as we would anybody else.
Yes.
Do we have any written policies on that or no?
On
The open enrollment, like, because we're talking about considerations for discipline, or is it kind of subjective?
It's not subjective at all. It's
No,
objective.
I get that, but do we have anything written down, like qualifications?
Yes, we do.
We do?
Okay. I'm sorry, on the application?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Suspensions, expulsions, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Moving on, next thing on the agenda is the approval of substitute teacher pay increase.
For the longest time, and honestly, I cannot recall when it hasn't been $65. That's what our substitutes earn a day to substitute as a substitute teacher here at South Range. I'd like to recommend we increase that to $70, $5 this year. I'll most likely come back this summer and ask for an additional raise of $5 to go to 75. But incrementally, $5 for the remainder of the school year, starting February 18th, and we'll see how that goes in terms of attracting substitutes.
Any questions or concerns on that? Next on the agenda is 8th grade class trip to Washington, D.C.
As you're aware, our 8th grade students have traveled to Washington, D.C. for a number of years now. This trip is being planned for May 18th through the 20th. The itinerary includes a variety of educational tours from the Capitol Building, Smithsonian, American History Museum. Their sabbaths will be supervised by chaperones and advisors at all times, and they'll be traveling by a licensed motor coach company, the company's 20th Century Tours. Mr. Zolik, anything else we can add to that?
No, I mean, we have 4 staff chaperones in addition to those individuals in the tour company. Nothing different.
Well organized and by the company and obviously Mr. Zolik and his staff.
Any discussions on that from the board?
I just question, if parents want to chaperone also, are they available to do so? Or
We
do
have
you
not done that in the past, simply because we have enough staff chaperones who agree to do that.
Any other questions? All right, next up is the MOU for the board and the Classified Employees Association.
An MOU stands for Memorandum of Understanding. It's between the South Range Board of Education and our classified employees. In this case, we're talking about our bus drivers. There are times where we have a need for our bus drivers to extend their normal route. I'll give you an example. We have buses that go into North Lima at the end of the school day that take our middle school and high school wrestling teams into the old locker room, the wrestling room, to practice. At times there's a need for additional shuttle with a different population that may get on our normal route, and they may need to go to the community center for swim team or something of that nature. So if the bus routes are being extended, we would need to reimburse our drivers for that extra time. That's what this memorandum of understanding speaks to. The extra trips, not extra trips, but shuttle trips during their normal route, where their normal route is being extended.
All right, any discussion on that? All right, next up is board policy discussion, and this is something I actually asked Mr. Dunn to put on. I just wanted to bring it up to the board to see where everybody else's opinion is, but currently our policy number 0169 states that for non-agenda public participation, that we require people to submit 10 days in advance to speak to us. I would like to see if we could possibly revise that where we no longer have that requirement. I don't know what everybody else's thoughts are.
I'd love to repeal that part of the bylaws, yeah.
Yeah, for many years, we did with, no participation or no advance notice for participation. And I would say probably the only thing we would need to do is just to have that policy probably changed. I would make the assumption we'd have to send that off to John Britton or whoever rates our Neola.
Would be a big deal if the board all votes to change it.
Yeah, I don't have an issue either with that, changing that.
Can I make a motion to repeal that policy then?
Well, when we come back through.
Yeah, I think you can, and I think when we come back through, right, we'll go.
Yeah, we can go back through and we can vote on it. One of the biggest things I think with that is I think there just has to be a general understanding that, when the public asks the board something, we may not know those facts and figures right up front. We may have to get back to everybody. But with that being said, I think this opens it up, makes everything a little bit more fluid.
I think the only concern is that, I think we have to, we're not going to get into a 30-minute debate.
Correct. We still have a 2-minute.
Whether that's 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever that is, but, we're not going to go on the whole night and have a discussion back and forth.
I agree with that.
In the policy, it says we only have 15 minutes for said discussions. We can always add to that if it's a big debate, but...
Yeah, I don't think there's an issue if we have a huge, but again, I don't think we want to get into a whole hour discussion month after month after month. But yeah, I would agree with that, Steve.
It would make sense procedurally to have it on, if that's what the board's wishes are, have it on next month for a first reading, anytime you have a policy change, and then it would be approved in the following month, as we do with all of our policies.
Taylor, would you be comfortable?
I'd prefer to get rid of it now, but if legally we have to wait until next month, then...
I mean, I don't know what everybody else's feelings are. We could...
I don't have a problem seeing it being repealed. It's just a matter of having language in place to replace it. And I don't have that for you right this minute.
Do we have to replace it though? Because we're just taking out the part where it says, I know we'd have to change the B to an A around like that.
I think that's the intent, at least for me, would be, let me show you what it is. Okay with that change. And then we have it for the following month of the year to be approved. We're just, it's legalese more than anything. think everybody has the intent to want to change that, that's fine, but I want to be able to make sure that we have the right language down to have it approved.
So it'll be next month. Okay.
Absolutely.
Comfortable with that. All right, next up then would be our public participation for agenda items. Do we have any public?
I've got a question. With regard to the policy, why was it instituted in the first place? Because we didn't have it, and then we went to it, now we're reviewing it. Why did we have it? Why did we institute it in the first place?
I think we all, I can't say if we always, I can tell you it was in there for a while.
No, I was at the meeting when you guys adopted it, and you put that in. I just thought, I always figured it was to shut me up. So that's, you know what I mean? Yeah, no, it didn't work. That's why it was put in.
It was, I believe, in November 2012 when we adopted the whole Neola policy book.
Because I was just talking, I went out to dinner with a Poland school board member, and they don't have that. They don't have, he's kind of shocked that we do have that.
Do they have Neola?
They just have the 2-minute recognition.
No, whose policy do they have?
I have no idea.
Because I think it was in the new book that we bought in 2012.
We didn't get that in depth. If I could, Corey, because I've requested time to speak tonight, and it sort of dovetails with the open enrollment policy that we have, but I've got questions on 1 or 2 other issues that we, Dennis, can you put that back up real quick? With regard to the calendar, is there any way we would ever consider doing it out maybe 2 years? Because like I just had to submit vacation. The company I work for does our vacation from fiscal year to fiscal year. So I just had to submit my 2 weeks vacation for the time that'll start this July 1st through June 30th of next year. So not knowing what you guys are doing, and actually with Mr. Lindstrom's trip being approved, I was able to sort of sneak that in real quick. But I think the public would appreciate it if we had the school year planned out maybe at least 2 years ahead. Would there be any difficulty? I mean, I understand the state could change it. It could be tentative based on, you know, changes at the state level or whatever. But I think the public would appreciate it if it was planned, you know, because we could plan our lives a lot better if we had a 2-year schedule. So that might be one thing you would want to
I
consider.
know I would personally be open to that, but I don't know if tentatively scheduling in advance, but I don't know how difficult that would be. Do you have any insight to that?
Oh, we still have to, you know, communicate with our associations, obviously.
Absolutely.
Both. Common calendar is what everyone's pushing for in all counties. It's very difficult. When I say common calendar, the same calendar for all districts in Mahoning County, which would be really difficult because everyone has, you know, there's different things that culturally that each district really is endearing to them. The Canfield Fair is important to South Range. The Canfield Fair is important. It may not be as important to perhaps Struthers, but it certainly is here. So every district's a little bit different. As far as 2 years in advance, I'm sure there's some positives and negatives to it. Never been asked the question. I would prefer to keep the calendar similar every year so that people can plan. There would be some differences, I'm sure, depending how holidays fall. You know, we wouldn't want to have, you know, if Christmas this next year, I think, is on a Tuesday or Wednesday. I put the calendar away, but you know, you want a few days before Christmas with students on a Tuesday. You wouldn't want Monday to be the last day of school before Christmas. So there's some things we could look at potentially.
And with regard to that, have we ever considered or thought it might be a decent idea to shorten up the Canfield Fair break? I mean, I know we're an agricultural district, and I know we have a certain number of kids. I don't really think it's really that many that have animals and activities at the fair. But I just think it's getting to the point to be ridiculous to take off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You know, you're in school for a week, you come back, basically that first week is pretty much lost. You know, and I don't think it's necessary. I have no problem Thursday through Monday, Labor Day. But I think educationally, we're doing our kids a disservice taking that long of a break just so they can go out the fair and, you know, have a good time. I mean, you're still doing it.
2 years ago, we had that calendar, and people did not like that calendar. We had.
What people? Because I never heard anyone complain about it.
People complain they would rather just have the whole week off.
We didn't like it.
Come back Monday.
Well, why don't we do a survey like we did a couple of years ago and see how many people want the longer break and how many
Mr.
don't?
French, I don't have to cut you off. I would love to finish this conversation because it's important, but I do have a quick question for you, because I
Sure.
know you wanted to talk about open
Yeah,
enrollment.
okay.
Do you mind if we take that from non-agenda items, and I allot you 2 minutes now? Is that
Yeah,
fair?
that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Here, I'm done. I prepared this for you guys, because the last 3 meetings I've come to, I've asked point-blank questions as to what we plan on doing about the $1.8 million deficit that we face in 2020, which is 2 years from now. And I've sort of gotten a hem-haw answer from Mr. Dunn as far as what we're doing. So I requested a bunch of figures from Mr. Phillips as far as student enrollment that we currently have in grades K through 12. And if you look at that spreadsheet, our current resident enrollment goes in kindergarten 63, first grade 48, second grade 60, 67, 76, 73, 63. It's not until you get to 7th grade where we go back up, like at 89, 83, 9th grade 76, and I'm talking resident enrollment. My question to you is, if we only have, if we're sub 75 kids in a class, why are we still running 4 teachers in grades K through 6 and next year grades K through 7? Because the problem we have, I don't think we have a funding issue. I mean, I think the money's there. I just don't think, I think we have a math and addition subtraction issue. Because open enrollment, which I was adamantly against, but now you pretty much need, I think open enrollment, we should call it what it is. It's theft. Jimmy's complained over and over again when we have kids leave the district, but yet he loves it when we have kids come in because it's revenue. And I get that. That's revenue for him, makes it easier.
I wish it was funny.
But it's, well, not for you, but for your job. But it's basically theft. We're stealing a kid and the accompanying revenue from another district. We don't like it when it happens to us, but we have no problem doing it to them. But that's a whole different issue. We're to the point now where open enrollment is what it is. It's here to stay. But what we should be doing, if you look in the one column, is the open enrollment we need, like in kindergarten, we need 12 kids. In first grade, we need maybe 27. Second grade, 15. Yet we have 20, 35, and 10 to the point where we have an excessive number of open enrollment kids, which, if you figure we get $5,800 for every open enrollment kid that comes in, but it costs us about $8,500 to educate a child, correct, Jimmy? All in. Ballpark. I'm like, well, you know.
Whatever the state said.
$8,500. So basically, because of the excess open enrollment students that we have in grades K through 6, this year alone, we will lose $450,200 on open enrollment kids. And the excess teacher cost by employing an extra teacher in those grade levels is $675,048, based on numbers that I used to come up with an average cost of a teacher of right around $84,000 to come up with a teacher. And I've got the documentation I can show anybody if they don't believe me on that. But when you figure we have an average salary, I think it was around $58,000, and then you add in STRS, benefits, all the other perks, it climbs pretty quickly to around $85,000, $84,000. So if you look at that, we're employing a lot more people than we need. Now, when I had this conversation with this gentleman from Poland on their school board, they've had 20 teachers leave their district in the last 2 years via, retirements, attrition, what have you. They haven't replaced a single teacher. I've urged Mr. Dunham to do that through the last probably 5 or 6 school boards. So we keep keeping people on the payroll. We can no longer afford to do that. A levy is a non-starter. I mean, I don't think,
Mr. French, I do time.
All right, it's not going to happen. I just think if you want a levy, that's wishful thinking.
I don't know if you want to respond at all, Mr. Phillips, or?
Anybody want me to respond? I don't need to.
Yeah, I honestly think it would be good to sort of show the numbers that you have to the whole community. That way we can sort of try to settle this debate here and now for good.
If you isolate open enrollment and say it costs $9,500 to educate a kid, and we get $5,800, obviously that's bad math. But if you take into consideration the total of what open enrollment brings in, and let's just say $85,000, if a teacher actually costs $85,000 and you're getting $5,800, what's that math work out to? 15, 16 kids are paid for. So if you're actually having to add teachers, that's something different. But in our small district, what would happen is we'd have to cut programs, because let's just take extracurriculars. In the fall, we have soccer and football. We're not going to be able to probably field either one of those teams, much less both of them, if we have 300 kids. So those kinds of things, long-term looking, what will we have to cut out? Not to mention the academic stuff with the extra programs that we're able to put in the district, that there wouldn't be enough kids to support. Otherwise, they'd be sitting in front of 2 or 3 kids, say in Spanish or home ec, or Mr. Dunham, you can talk more about that than I can, but you see where I'm going.
Absolutely will.
Let's see if college credit plus we're good, when we get to the high school level.
Does anybody
Which, by
else?
the way, takes about $120,000 to $150,000 a year away from us.
For how many kids?
I just see it coming out below the line.
We're going to move
It's about
on.
90 kids. It's about 90.
We're going to move on. Does anybody else have any other public comments? Questions? All right, seeing as there are none, let's go back through.
DJ. Yeah.
Put it on the agenda.
You're going to come back through afterwards, if you don't mind. Is that fair?
Why? Why?
Because that's the way it's done. If you people would come other than when your
Mr.
contract's up,
Frecek.
you know that.
Mr. Frecek. The reason why is we generally go through, the only reason we moved him up is because he asked for open enrollment policy. So we moved him up. So, first thing on the agenda is the appointment of the OSBA Legislative Liaison and Student Achievement Liaison. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Ralph moves, John second? Second. Amy second. Yeah, Amy second. Motion carried. Oh, wait, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the 2018-2019 academic calendar adoption. Do you have a motion?
Yeah, you got a motion.
Well, still got a motion.
So moved.
Ralph moves, do I have a second?
Second.
Terry seconds, roll call.
Taylor Christian,
No.
Terry Lally,
Yes.
Ralph Wintz,
Yes.
Amy White,
Yes.
Corey Yocum.
Yes. Next up is the open enrollment 2018-2019 resolution. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Amy moves, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, this is roll call.
Taylor Christian,
Yes.
Terry Lally,
Yes.
Ralph Wintz,
Yes.
Amy White,
Yes.
Corey Yocum.
Yes. Next is the approval of substitute teacher pay increase. Do I have a motion?
I motion.
Terry motions, do I have a second?
Second.
Taylor seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next is the approval of 8th grade class trip to Washington, D.C. Do I have a motion?
I motion.
Terry motions, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the MOU of the South Range Local District Board of Education and South Range Classified Employees Association. Do I have a motion?
I motion.
Terry motions, do I have a second?
Second.
Ralph seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, board policy discussion, that's a non-action, because we'll table that for next month. Correct? All right. Next up, Mr. Dunham with the January, February, March district update.
1 second here. Okay, good evening again. Some of you are, I'm sure, going to have difficulty seeing this. As we've alluded to and talked over the last couple of months, we're talking about a deficit reduction plan here. I have two different plans, a Plan A and a Plan B. Plan A is a combination of reducing our deficit and also with the revenue increase. Plan B is just strictly deficit reduction. And there's a lot to this. I could speak for hours on this, to be quite honest. A lot of the questions that were asked tonight may start making sense in terms of, as when I start to walk through this. But I'm going to start with just this first slide in the fiscal history from 2004 to 2018. As you've heard over the last couple months, in the spring of 2020, at the end of the 1920 school year, if projections go the way that Mr. Phillips has them tracking, we are going to be $1.8 million in debt. 1.8 million. We'll have a deficit in FY20. So we're going to finish this school year, 17-18. We're going to go through next year, 18-19, and in the 19-20 school year, we will end that year with a $1.8 million deficit. There's a lot of things that could happen between now and then. A lot of things. And that's what some of these slides will hopefully help identify for our whole audience here. Well, let's back up just a little bit. We know this district came together in 1969. We had levies passed in the 70s. We had levies passed in the 80s. We had levies just every 8 years that were passed, the last one in 2004. Before that was 1996. So in 2004, we passed a 5.9 mil emergency operating levy, and that generated $793,000. A mill back then was probably a little over 100,000. You can do the math, about 115, 120,000 roughly. The mill right now, you'll see later, the mill would generate $200,000 in the South Range Local School District. This will all make a little bit of sense as we keep going through. In 2012, many of you sat in this very band room, and we were in fiscal precaution as defined by the Ohio Department of Education. And we had deficit reduction plans in place for 2011-12, 12-13, 13-14, and 15-16. In 2011, in April of 11, 14 certificated employees and 15 classified contracts were suspended. They were ripped. 14 certificated, 15 classified. In 15-16, we suspended or ripped 3 certificated contracts. That's a lot of people. Some of the people that are in here today were part of that back in 11-12. And I certainly don't take any of that lightly, because I can look at every one of you square in the eye and say this is difficult to talk about. And why is that? What keeps happening here? Is it poor management? Is it entirely the superintendent? Is the board? Has it always been the board? Is it all? There's a lot of factors go into why South Range is where they are. And hopefully at the end of this, it might make more sense to you if you're willing to listen. So what did we do? Well, we did a lot of different things besides just people. We combined positions. We combined administrative positions to reduce costs. And I'm talking to many of you who are in the choir. You've heard this for years. In fact, many of you are doing it. You're part of it. You're part of that combination of contracts, of positions, of job descriptions. You're all part of that. We implemented open enrollment in 2014, 2015. Ask yourself why you didn't hear anything the last 2 years about our finances. Open enrollment certainly helped our bottom line. We're a little over 300 students coming into our district. And I'm going to talk about staffing. And I'm going to talk about how many kids we have that are resident, and how many kids are open enrollment, and what would happen in my mind only, what would happen if this district didn't have the population that we have. If we were to track it forward from the time they walked into kindergarten until the time that they leave. So a lot to think about. So the next slide again. So what's happened? State funding cuts have had a devastating effect on South Range local schools. This year alone, $173,000. Does that sound like a lot of money? In a $12.5, $13 million budget, it's not a lot of money, but take that and compound and run it out 5 years. Take that and run CCP, College Credit Plus, out 5 years. Or anything else that comes down the pike. And we have plenty of unfunded mandates that come along, and we're picking it up. Go back to that 2004. $793,000. 14 years ago, in your own household, if you were to have the same check in 2004 that you have in 2000, and now it's 2018, you'd have to do some belt tightening as well. I'm sure of that. Your utility costs haven't gone down, your cost of living, everything that you do, you would have to really make some significant changes. And that's what we've done since 2011. Before I go too far, I'm going to stop for a moment and let Mr. Phillips talk about an explanation. You'll see on that second bullet, an explanation of what it means above and below the funding line.
On the website of the Ohio Department of Education, it's pretty easy. At the top right corner, there's a key word, and if you put in state or just foundation, that's how we're paid. They call it foundation. The portion of our general fund revenue that comes from the state is called state foundation. On the state foundation form, if you follow through the website and click through it, you'll find that there's a funding formula, and about halfway down, in our case, I think it's $4,700,000. Let me get the thing so I don't say it wrong. Okay, this is the form that'll come up. I know you can't see it, but I want you to see it. It's just a one page. Halfway down, all this top part does math crunching to say the state's going to give us $4,570,000 and some change. That's above the line, and that's above that line is how they calculate what does South Range get based on our state formula. Below this line, they take out $173,000 for community schools, which are charter schools. There's a STEM school transfer, $34,000. I'm rounding up 33,929, so I'm not rounding up a lot. Scholarship transfer, that's another way of taking money from here and giving it to another school, $188,000. When all's said and done, we would be $1,399,420 in the hole if we didn't have open enrollment in, because we have $313,926 of open enrollment going out. So prior to 2014, when we adopted open enrollment, we had a lot of money going out, and it's as much now as it ever was. We have $1,972,000 come in. So we're netting about $1.6 million of open enrollment. But then, when you deduct all those other things below this line, that's where our state funding, and then on top of that, they killed the guarantee this year. That's $173,000 Mr. Dunham spoke of. And this isn't just South Range, this is statewide. And you see some communities very close to ours that are running into this trouble now too. Is that enough?
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate it. CCP is $125,000 for the 16-17 school year. So let's talk about some of the things we've implemented over at least the last 10 to 15 years. In 2007, we started all-day, everyday kindergarten. We expanded some of our special education programs. We've expanded extracurricular programs in the past 10 or 15 years, like golf, wrestling, soccer, swimming. Our co-curricular programs were added as a result of community input and overall desire. I, like all of you, we want as many possible things for our kids and as many opportunities as possible for our kids. Whether your children have graduated and have gone on, they've started their own families, or you're sitting here with younger kids coming into the district, we want the very best for them. We want as many programs as possible. There's a cost associated with all of those programs. Go back to that first slide of 2004, $793,000. That's great, but every program that we add, there's a cost associated with it. So it's very difficult to maintain some of these things. And when I say it's overall desire, all of you are benefiting from one or another of these programs. I would think that you would all agree with that. And none of it's bad for kids. It's all great. I've said this a million times. You know, I'm not going to play on that basketball court. I'm not going out to the field to play soccer or football. None of us are doing that in here unless you're a student here. So there's nothing wrong with what we've done. No one has done anything wrong whatsoever, other than care about kids. But there's a price to pay, and that's what we're going through right now. So our ODE staffing analysis, because we talk about we have way too many staff members. We've made some significant strides since 2012. About a month ago, I asked Leanne Sidley with the Ohio Department of Education to send a staffing analysis for South Range Local School District. A few years ago, we had a staffing analysis done, and you see in 2013, this was our per pupil expenditure in 2013. We were spending $10,138. Similar districts were 96.91. We were still below the state average of $10,228. Look at the differences from 2013 to 2017. We've now fallen way down in terms of per pupil expenditure. Even in 14, we were below similar and state. We were below similar and state in 2015, 2016, and now 2017, you can see the differences. So how is that possible? Because we certainly have made the differences in, when I talked about the 14 certificated, the 15 classified, the 3 certificated in 2015-16, those cuts have made a significant difference on our bottom line. Obviously, it still hasn't been enough. So fiscal history and actions to address the deficit without new operating dollars. We started adjacent, and then we went to statewide open enrollment. Combined administrative and non-administrative positions. Mr. Dunn spoke about a used bus today. We reduced our transportation department to single bus routes. Significant savings. Big change with our staff, but significant savings. Putting half the wear and tear, mileage, fuel costs on our buses. So we haven't just sat back and said, we just need to put a levy on and that will solve everything. We've done a lot of different things to try to make things more cost effective in the district. And then the last one that it kind of skims over everyone's head, negotiated a 5-year absolute pay freeze for all employees from 2010 to 2015. I'm going to tell you, I don't know if that's happened anywhere else in the state of Ohio. 2010 through 2015. Not a cent, not a step increase, not a cent in anyone's pocket in terms of employees here at South Range, more than from 2010 to 2015. So what are we doing to reduce, what are we doing to try to address this fiscal deficit? Let's start with personnel. These are proposals, and that's all it is, discussion. Reduction in expenditures under personnel. Proposed reduction in force of full and part-time certificated teaching and or administrative employees for the 18-19 school year. Everything is on the table, and that's part of tonight. This will be part of the next few board meetings until we can agree on what we really need to reduce in terms of personnel. Estimated certificated personnel cost reduction to address the deficit, $350,000. That's contingent upon FY 18, 19, and 20 financial forecast remaining as projected. And when Mr. Phillips talked about above and below the line, if that doesn't change any, those numbers are pretty accurate. That's what we would need to at least keep our nose above the water line for the end of the 18-19 school year. Mr. Frenchek mentioned what we're going to do to address the $1.8 million deficit. That's the end of fiscal year 20. So we're not taking baby steps, we're addressing it this coming year and then the following year. So it's a two-year process. We could just stop and say, hey, we're good until the end of 20, and then it's going to compound itself into such a problem that we couldn't get out of it. So we're looking at it a little bit at a time. When I say a little bit, a lot for 18-19 and the same amount for 19-20. So the number that I'm looking at is close to $900,000 to $1 million in fiscal year 19, the 18-19 school year, to address this issue. Part of it is in personnel, certificated of $350,000. The other part would be $210,000 in classified. That number in itself, and all of you can see that pretty easily, that's $560,000. We're better than halfway there, and that's in people. What do we do here? We educate kids. So we're not building things. We're educating kids, and we need staff. So that's why this part's difficult. let's keep going. What are some other things we can do other than people? Propose eliminating a bus purchase in 19 and 20. At South Range, how many buses do we have? 22, 23?
24.
24 with our used buses. We buy one new bus a year. It's roughly $85,000 to $86,000. We go for 2 years without buying a bus. That saves us, easy math, $190,000, roughly $200,000 over 2 years. Proposed reduction of materials and supplies. Our building principals get a budget each year so that they can share that budget with their teachers, so the teachers have resources for the classroom. I propose trimming some of those budgets. Maybe elementary would be cut by 20,000. Middle school and high school by 15. Elementary has more grades than middle school and high school. There's potentially save $50,000. Mr. Phillips and wisely has set aside a couple $100,000 in each forecasted year as contingency money. In the event something catastrophic happened, we have a well and wastewater treatment plant system here. If a water well went bad, maybe something catastrophic, our wastewater treatment plant, who knows? It's nice to have dollars set aside to address those. If we were to take half of our contingency money, that'd be $100,000 we could apply towards that deficit. That total cost reduction will be $235,000. Let's talk about a few other things, and these come back to people and contracts. Our school resource officer, is there a soul in here that would think that it would be a good idea not to have a school resource officer in 2018? No. There's just certain things that it's here for a reason. There's points to be made. There's just certain things we're not going to be able to do without. Our negotiated contract discussions. There's a lot of ifs here. We have some great people that are in leadership positions with South Range Education Association, South Range Classified Education Association that care about kids. They have to sit across the board from the Board of Education, and we have to negotiate. It's what we all do. And every school district in the state of Ohio does that. Again, 2010 through 2015, 5 years, absolute pay freeze. We've had modest increases since then, 1%, 1.5%, 1%, not even cost of living. But we understand that, and they still understand that, and still reasonable people that care about the taxpayers here and kids. But they deserve a fair wage as well. Reduction of select supplemental contract positions without eliminating extra and co-curricular programs. I don't have a favorite sport. Maybe all of you do. Maybe we can eliminate something, some assistant coach. I don't know. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Maybe it's, we need a freshman class advisor. We need a sophomore class. We need academic challenge, NHS. I can keep going. I'm not proposing any of those, but that's something we have to look at. Can we reduce any supplemental contract positions without eliminating extra or co-curricular programs? What can we do to increase statewide open enrollment? Just passed the resolution tonight. Mr. Frenchek stole some of my thunder here. We have 63 resident kids, and in the green you can see those are our open enrollment numbers. Okay? Anybody believe that in first grade we only had 48 kids? What does that tell you about Beaver Township, Green Township? Declining enrollment. It's very difficult. It's very difficult for starter families to move into South Range schools and find property or to build a home or find a property in which they can live. Very difficult right now.
Didn't they forecast that when they built the new school, they knew all this?
Mrs. Fromm asked if they forecasted that, and the answer was yes. And it was way above what it is now, but could not, for some reason, have that crystal ball to know that in 2008 there was going to be a depression. So you just don't know. You just don't know. There's a reason why I'm going to go through all of this. You'll notice there are some asterisks besides some of these. So if you take these numbers, your kindergarten numbers right now, 95 kids. Can we take any open enrollment kids in first grade next year in your mind? No. That would not be educationally sound, because we know we're going to have some residents come in and move children into the school district over the next few years. So kindergarten, we would not be able to take, first grade, take any students into first grade for the 18-19 school year. First grade, second grade, we could probably take a few students. When I say a few, 3 to 5 kids. Middle school numbers, again, you can see resident and open enrollment. Grades 5 and 6, 8th grade, potentially we can take a few students. Same thing with high school. And those numbers, 9th, 10th, we're going to lose our 12th graders, obviously they drop off. And we have no idea at this point, we'll go back up to elementary, how many students we're going to have that are resident enrollment or open enrollment for this coming year. But with that said, it would be reasonable to expect we could take beyond kindergarten next year an additional, most likely 20 to 25 students beyond kindergarten, just by keeping those numbers and running this efficiently. And that's all open enrollment has ever been here, is to try to keep our numbers. And again, out of due respect for everybody, I do care about people's jobs. I do. However, I also care deeply about programs tracking it forward from the time they walk into here until they leave. And that's what's important. If you were to back up, which I'm going to take one moment and do so, go to first grade, 48 kids, no more open enrollment. Take those 48 kids, what will we have as they go through second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, I'll keep saying it, sixth grade, seventh grade, eighth grade, 48 students. Go back a couple more slides, programs that we've implemented. 48 students, how many teachers do you need? You really want to say it? 2. Is that what we want at South Range Schools? If it is, then that's what we're going to get most likely. I don't know if that's the case. But again, if you were to run that out, run it out. Can we sustain programs in the middle school and high school for 48 students in that grade? I'd say the same thing with the second grade with 60 kids. So those are things that we have to consider. Can we sustain programs with the numbers that we have with our resident and not having any open enrollment numbers? Last one, Plan A, operating levy. Initiate discussion in terms of placing a new operating levy on the November 18 ballot to offset the FY20 deficit. The actual millage would be determined by the revised 5-year financial forecast on or before June 30th of 18. A lot of things can happen. Can there be more cuts? Can there be better? There could be some increased state funding? Hard to tell. But you look at the differences here. When I talked about that 5.9, basically a 3.9 mil levy would generate the same amount back in 04. 4.9, almost $1 million, 5.9 levy. 5.9 mil levy would generate 1.1 million. So let's talk about the summary here. Reduction in force, $560,000. Reduction of purchase services, $135,000. Contingency funds, transferring at $100,000. Open enrollment, 25 kids times 6,000 is 150. Proposed operating levy, I didn't figure that into any of these proposals, but the total annual savings without proposed levy dollars, $945,000. What's the number that I started out with? The number I spoke about was $1.8 million in 2 years. We need $900,000 just simplistically for this next year. That's keeping your nose above the water line. That's all it's doing. We're not growing. All we're doing is keeping our nose above the water line. And instead of me, each year I put on the slide 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18, deficit reduction, that's what we're going to continue to do. We'll have an auditorium or we'll have someplace bigger because it's going to be the same thing. You cannot continue to operate the way that we're doing the same thing year in and year out. And we keep reducing staff, but again, we're coming back here with the same thing because of the cuts that we're seeing throughout the state, and especially South Range schools. That's Plan A. Questions that I can answer with Plan A, and I'll go to Plan B. Yes, sir.
Why can't we go, I understand you don't want to cut the high school, you don't want fewer than like 100 kids in high school, and late middle school, 7th, 8th grade. I get that. because then we have to we would have to start losing programs that we like. Why can't we reduce the class sizes in K through 6 or K through 7?
In my opinion, that's all it is, mine. When parents bring their kids in here, they want to start them in kindergarten, and they want them to stay here.
Absolutely.
That's so important, because we went through it a few years ago, and the example was this. Canfield did not have, I want to say Canfield, all day everyday kindergarten? Didn't have it. So we had students that came in here. They never left. They never left. They could have gone back to Canfield for first grade, but they never left. Again, it's all it is my opinion. I believe when parents bring their kids, their children to a school, they don't want to pick them up each year and move them. They want to keep them. Whether it's South Range, Boardman, Canfield, doesn't matter.
Kids don't want to leave either, sir.
I apologize. Let me delete this one and get the...
Mr. Dunham, will you please explain to everybody what would happen if we don't make the cuts, what the state will do when they come in?
I will absolutely do that. So the question from Mrs. Lally, if we don't do it, would the Ohio Department of Education come in, and honestly, they're doing it right now. They're going to be doing it with Niles as they're going through this issue. They'll make those decisions for us. Which programs, which staff, administration, you name it, would go by the wayside. So I think we'd much rather have local control over this than the state coming in. And that happens periodically throughout the state. And it's not by no means any type of a threat. I've not even talked about it, but it does happen. Fortunately, it hasn't happened to us, but it has happened to other districts close by.
Usually, what's the first thing that they cut?
Specials, sports, and I haven't even talked about that, but that's going to be in this next one here.
If they did come in, would they make you go down to 3 teachers per grade level, K through 6?
I don't know that. I truly don't know that.
Well, I mean, then why haven't we conducted a performance audit to determine that?
I can't answer it.
Jim looked at the performance audits, 3 meetings ago you brought that up? What would they do? Because you looked at it, I would assume that's a reasonable option to take. They would right-size the district. They would get you down to where you should be.
I think they would take and make you the state minimums. I think that's a fair assessment.
Well, at 75 kids a class, you would still have to add open enrollment kids to get to 75.
But I think
and that would give you 25 kids a class, Ralph.
But I believe they'll still take you to state. There'll be a lot of things that can be cut that are extras. They'll take you to state minimums. I believe. I don't know that either.
The ifs and buts with Canyon and nuts, life can be a circus. And everybody who wants to come here comes here because they like the programs that are here.
Exactly.
That's why you get the open enrollment. I go to different schools, I've been to McDonald, and they're like, oh, South Range, they see that. They're like, oh, that is a great district, you have great programs, you have great kids. And people can see that outside. As you start cutting all that, I mean, everybody talks about, we want to cut this, cut this, cut this. There's a few people that want to cut it, it's usually the same people, that's all I want to say. If you go district-wide and put the news out there, it's very hard to get out there. People want the programs, people come here for the programs. You can send your kid anywhere if you want to. I mean, you can go to Poland. If you think it's better there, Rich, you can go to Poland, you can go to Borton. I think that's where
you can't go to Poland, Rob, because they're not open enrollment. I could move there if I wanted.
Let me start with Plan B.
Go.
Continue on. Plan B, primarily deficit reduction. And when I say primarily, because there is open enrollment in this as well. I'm not going to do this to you again because you've been very, very patient with me. The first slide is no different. The second slide, no different. Staffing analysis and really performance audit. There's a lot in the staffing analysis that tells us where we are with performance audit, in my mind. Personnel is where it really changes. So now there is no levy in sight, there is no increased revenue other than open enrollment. This is strictly reducing our deficit by personnel and resources that we have at our disposal. And now I've essentially doubled the personnel for FY19 and 20. $640,000. That 350,000 number, and again, I'm not trying to induce panic, that could be anywhere from 6, 7, 8, 9 full and part-time certificated employees. It's a lot of people, a lot of people. We would not have those folks here, trust me, and you all know this, if we didn't need them. We didn't need them. They're not sitting around twiddling their thumbs, sitting in a study hall somewhere. They're actively engaging kids. The same thing with our classified. We've essentially doubled those cuts and those reductions in personnel, and now you're looking at $1 million. It's $1 million in itself. So think of that. When I had to look at your faces when I said back in 2011, 2012, 14 people lost their jobs. How many of you remember the 14 people? 14 and 15 classified. 29 people in all. Are some of them back in here? Yes. Same thing with expenditure reductions with the buses, materials and supplies, contingencies, total cost reduction $235. Here's where it changes. Mr. Frenchek asked, or Mrs. Lally asked, what would they do if the state came in? I'm going to tell you the extracurricular and the co-curricular activities, those are nice to have, but they're not must-haves. You don't have to have them. You don't have to have them. Now we would start reducing select extra and co-curricular activities. Mr. Farron was in here a few months ago talking about finances in terms of our sports that really are non-revenue sports. They don't charge people to get in, and sports that are revenue sports. But do we have a single sport, Mr. Phillips can answer it, Mr. Farron can answer it, that can pay for itself? No. No. Not a single sport.
Not even football.
No. Not even close.
No. Not a single sport. So again, nice to haves, must haves. Must have, you don't have to have sports. Not a threat, but that's something, we're not looking at it this coming year. I could never do that. I don't believe this board, anyone could ever do that. To sit here and stand here in February 12th and say, for the 18-19 school year, I think we're going to get rid of these programs. That's not the idea behind this. This is discussion purposes to give people an idea of what we're up against. Now, if we're sitting here in 2019 in February, and we're still looking at a big deficit, those are areas that we have to look at. And Mr. Phillips would tell you we spend roughly what in extracurricular programs?
About $350,000. The only thing general fund pays for is the salaries for the advisors, your class advisors, National Honor Society, coaches. But along with those salaries comes the retirement and Medicare and workers' comp that every employer has to pay for their employees. When you total all of that in, it's about $350,000.
So if we were to take the number that he just gave you, roughly mid-300s, and we were to reduce select extra and co-curricular activities, and you name one. I'm not about to mention one of them. You name one of them. Name 3 of them. Take one in the spring, one in the winter, one in the fall.
How much of that 350 is covered by pay to participate fees?
About 38,000 is transportation activity fees.
That's transportation activity, but what about the pay to participate fees?
That's
all in? Okay, so that's transportation, that's both of them together.
Right.
Okay.
That's what we call transportation activity fees. We generate about $38,000 for that.
When did that start, Dennis?
This is our 3rd year, I want to say.
What is it for you?
I want to say it's our 3rd
Right,
year.
it's our 3rd year that we've done that?
Now is again part of the deficit reduction. Statewide open enrollment, saw those slides. And then the summary. Why did I go so high with the reduction in force? If we're talking no levy, no revenue increase. In the last slide, Plan A was roughly $950,000, and then looking at potentially a levy. If all we're doing is just cutting, and we're not looking at revenue, $1 million isn't going to be enough, because it's not going to sustain you year in and year out. It just is not going to happen. It's like anything else. The cost of living, utilities, you name it, it's all going to rise. So I went to 1.5, almost 1.6 in just reduction in force, materials and supplies, contingency funds to try to get us through into 2021, 2022, if there's no levy in sight. Again, these programs that we're talking about, all the programs that you see every day, your kids are participating in, involved in, the extracurriculars after school, in 2020, if we can't turn this thing around, then that'd be something that the state or our Board of Education would have to consider in terms of eliminating these nice-to-have programs. So neither one of these plans are what anyone wants to see or hear, especially me. I'm the guy that's standing up here in front of everyone trying to answer questions and trying to be diplomatic and trying to make you understand where we are with this. This is something that it's very difficult to talk about because it's about people. And it's going to affect kids. So the first phase, just to summarize Plan A, is some type of combination. And those cuts, again, I had $950,000 in cuts. You could make it $500,000 if you wanted. You could make it $250,000. But if you don't pass a levy, then that's going to compound itself into the 1920 school year. It's going to be worse. So, everyone has choices in life, and people talk about there are too many choices in life. In this case, it could be very much an a la carte menu with the Plan A, with reduction of force and levy, or again, Plan B is nothing but cuts with some increase in open enrollment.
You had a levy fail 2 to 1, what, 2 or 3 times, 2 or 3 years
We
ago?
did, yes.
Two, I mean, 2 to 1, it basically failed.
I guess
what's changed in the last 3 years?
This is where I look at, I live in this district like all of you do, and I look at it, we're all in this together. I didn't. So no, when I say we, it failed. Yes, it failed. It failed.
So you want a resident now, 1 of every 4 kids in this district is open enrollment. You want me as a resident to give you money so I can subsidize the 25% of the people that don't live here.
Let me answer it this way. I'm proposing these. Nobody's voted on anything.
Well, yeah, then you've got like your girls' basketball team where 4 of your 5 starters are open enrollment kids. How likely are the kids who are sitting on the line? How likely are those parents to vote for your levy?
You're a Raider.
I can't answer that. I don't know that.
Won't be a bench to sit on.
You can have a sport. You can make cuts without having to gut this district. A lot of you don't like me, but in all honesty, I mean, I really don't. I mean, if you look at what I've been saying for 5 and 6 years, I'm right and he's wrong. Well, the numbers don't lie. You would not be here if he would have listened to, if he would have done what I told him to do 4 and 6 years ago. You would not be here. You may not like to hear it, but that's the truth.
All right, real quick. Wow. I can't speak for any other board member, but I can tell you right now, every single, well, at least me, I'm losing a lot of sleep. These are tough decisions. There is no doubt about it. I walked around this school the other day, and I tell you what, there's a lot of great things happening. We have some great kids here. We have some great teachers here. There's no doubt about it. I've always said that before the kids, and I can tell you I'm still in. These are difficult decisions. There's no easy answers. We can tar and feather a certain citizen. We can tar and feather each other, but unless we're together, like Mr. Dunham said, we're going to fall apart.
Correct.
All right?
100%.
Has anyone, do we have any lobbying power in the state to receive more funds? Governor Kasich has a large rainy day fund that seems to be in grip tight and is not releasing any of that. So do we have any kind of power or voice at the state level?
You know what? That's something I know I personally called a lot. I don't know if anybody else has, but I encourage everybody to call state legislators. That's the option we have, honestly.
The answer to that is yes. The Buckeye Association of School Administrators, the Ohio School Boards Association, and the Ohio Association of School Business Officials are 3 organizations to which various members of our administration and board belong to, and they do lobbying efforts. In addition to that, I personally have been down during biennial budget discussions and testified to the budget committees of the legislature, other treasurers throughout the state, and superintendents, even teachers have done the same thing. So yeah, we try, but we keep electing people who don't want to do that.
Well, there's a governor's race coming up pretty soon, so maybe he'll be off to release some of that money.
I'd like to add, and Jim can kind of direct you in how to see it, because I've searched around some. So in round numbers, the state says we collect $6,000 per kid. Depending on what the wealth of your district looks like, depends on what percent of that 6,000 you receive. Yes, we get the full 6,000 in round numbers for every open enroll kid, but in South Range, of that $6,000, we get about 36% of that. All you have to do is look per resident kid. If you search around on the state audit or ODE's website, you will see that poor districts receive more dollars than what wealthier districts have. Again, nobody here decides whether we're a wealthy district or not. The state's deciding that. So it's misleading when they say how much we're getting, because we are continuing getting, how many, if we go back 5 or 10 years ago, what percent of that, it wasn't 6,000, but whatever it was, what percent were we getting?
I know, many of you know I'm old. I came here 27 years ago, and at that time, we were getting 57% of whatever the state said we were getting. Since then, our valuations have grown. We've added neighborhoods. People that moved in those neighborhoods apparently make enough money that
Correct.
if you look at the Ohio Department of Taxation information, the median and average incomes of the people who live in our district have gone up. And that and the value of the houses, the newer houses compared to the ones that were here 25 years ago, has made, these are all parts of the formula that the state ultimately says, South Range, we're going to give you 36% of that $6,000. So that's the problem. Unfortunately, we're rich.
And the state says, if you have enough wealth in your district, you should be able to sustain your schools more from the district. The districts that are less fortunate than you, we're going to give them a higher percentage of that dollar stuff. And again, the average person doesn't know nor see that when they look at things.
And unfortunately, no matter what happens in the governor's race in 2018, it's not really going to help our situation right now, because that governor won't take office until 2019, and it may take 2-3 years before their platform's even really in motion. So regardless of who wins this gubernatorial race, we have to make the decision that we do now, and we need to just do our best to do what's best for.
And the governor can't change everything. You still have a House, you still have a Senate. Those things get changed by us. Somebody said, call them and tell them, we don't like what you're doing in our public schools. We don't like it at all, and we want it to go back the way it ought to be. That's what will happen.
With that being said, I believe Mr. Arns had a couple words he would like to say also.
I think it is tricky and tough, like Mr. Dunn said, and just talking deficit and talking cuts, and we just want to kind of share some of our concerns and the way we feel about certain things that seem to be happening or might be happening. I've been lucky enough to be here 17 years to third grade, so it's hard to talk about this, but it's also hard to talk to people that are older than 8 and 9 years old, which is usually my crowd. Hopefully I get my points across, but anytime that we're out in the community or other communities, the first thing that's said is just, when you talk to, say, your kids go to South Range, so you teach there, so you coach there, what a great school it is, and there's this admiration for South Range. So I think we're just so lucky to have that. And I think it's not that people are just looking, at this beautiful new building. I think when you think about us, people think about the people, and it doesn't matter what you do here. We all give it all we got, and then even more. And I think that's what it's about. Whether the custodians that are staying extra time, or whether you're a teacher, or whether you're a principal, and all our administrators and our board members, we're all willing. Our parents, and we're all willing to give it. I mean, even our kids. you think about some of the things even Mr. Rowan talked about, you know, our kids, it's just, it's different. And if you taught somewhere else or did somewhere else, I think you know that it's different. And as we were just thinking about this, I thought first about like our school leaders, which would be our principals, and you can't come in the building and not see them. And you know, in the elementary, the first person those kids see is that big smile on the face of Mr. Matus when he walks in, and they appreciate the fact that he's there every morning, same spot. You know, you can't do anything in the middle school without hearing about, you know, Mr. Zolik having to be up on the roof again or getting covered in ice cream. There's guys like Mr. Rowan that goes to bat for his kids every day and uses his own time to tutor kids. You know, that's on stuff that he used to teach. So those guys are doing above and beyond. And so I really appreciate that. And talks about possibly cutting administrators makes you nervous just for a lot of reasons. But, you know, if we're worried about school improvement and student achievement, I think we need to have those administrators with us. I think it's hard for a kid, I think, to come to school and feel comfortable if they don't feel like a connection with obviously their teacher, which I think is the first connection they have. But kids here also have a connection with their administrators. And they know them and they love them. So that's important. And then, unfortunately, school safety has become an issue. And I think I would personally be nervous, you know, having kids in my own district and being a teacher, knowing that if we only have 2 administrators in 3 buildings and something's happening, where are they going to go? What are they going to do when that happens? And obviously, hope that never happens. And us teachers, we look to our administrators. We look to them for just instructional help. Obviously, behavioral help. If we need help with how to deal with certain kids, we go to our administrators. And just moral support. I know in our building, it's huge where we always feel like we're supported, 100%, and that makes us better teachers, and I think that helps us help the kids. Basically, you know, we have 3 experienced, dedicated principals who are consistently trying to improve our schools, and I hope that we remember that. And not to mention, you know, with that, with our leaders, we have the best teachers around, and I'm not saying that this is not one. But I really believe when I think about the amount of time and the amount of camaraderie we have, the amount of effort that we all put into each of these kids, I think that's just so important. You know, it was brought to our attention that we're actually 14 employees understaffed when we're compared to districts similar size. It's you know, that being said, like it's hard to kind of stay on script for me sometimes, but schools, people will say schools like yours can make these cuts and still do things. Schools like yours can do this, but we're not like any other school. I don't think. No. And I think if we want to stay that way, we need to make sure that we're making the best decisions for our kids. So, you know, in a district that's known for the success across the board, we as staff members realize that every single teacher, every person is important for that success. And I think in order for us to continue to move forward, we got to make sure that we're not taking any steps backwards. So, hope I got my points across, but I just want to appreciate you for giving us some time to talk.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the executive session.
Actually, I'd like to say
something.
None of us want to make cuts, but a lot of it too, we're going to put it out to the teachers and staff. We have a lot of teachers that could be retiring or maybe considering retiring. This would help in reducing what we have to cut. If you are thinking about retiring, this would be the time. I just wanted to put it out there because we don't want to cut anything. Whenever we do have some teachers that are thinking about retiring, and that would help save position for your colleague. And unfortunately, we do have to cut people, and it has been very, very hard. We've met, what, 2 or 3 times already, and we can't even make decisions because we want to keep as many as we possibly can. So we have, I think we're considering another special session on the 22nd. So if there's any teacher or staff considering to retire, please let Mr. Dunham know by then. It'll only help our decisions easier.
All right. So next up is executive session. We'd be going in for Ohio Revised Code 121.22 for the purpose of confidential discussion of employment of a public employee or official, to discuss the compensation of an employee, consider the sale of property at competitive bidding, and to review negotiations or bargaining session with employees concerning compensation or other terms and conditions of employment. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Amy moves. Do I have a second?
A second.
Terry seconds. Roll call.
Taylor Christian.
Yes.
Terry Lally.
Yes.
Ralph Wintz.
Yes.
Amy White.
Yes.
Corey Yocum.
Yes. We move into executive session at 8:40. Everybody's welcome to stay if you would like, but we may be in a little bit.
I have one question before you go.
Oh.
We just reevaluated